I tend to believe, and I've been taught this in various ways, that we make decisions from either love or fear. And people have heard that one before, okay? And of course, love can look like trust and generosity and contribution and abundance, and fear can look like that fear of missing out. And I better grind, because if I don't grind, people are going to trample over me on their way to the top. So with clients, I stop at the motivation point when they're thinking of a decision or an action or a strategy. Whoa, hold on. Let's just check. Is that coming from love, trust, generosity, creativity, or is that coming from control, manipulation, fear of missing out, panic? And that can be a stopping point for people where they have the aha before having to go out in real life and go that far down the path to have the epiphany that I had.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. At Tap the Potential, we know that you want to be freed from the constant demands of your business. In order to do that, you need a business that supports your life. The problem is you have a cash-sucking business taking over your life, leaving you frustrated and discouraged. We believe work supports life, not the other way around. We understand you're paying a team and you're still having to do it all. There should be accountability. It shouldn't be this hard, which is why through our proprietary coaching system, we help thousands of business owners just like you have more time for what's important to them and grow profit by 300 to 800%. Here's how we do it. First, take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Next, meet with our success team lead to debrief your results. Then, join our Better Business, Better Life program. By the end of your first year with us, you will have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had before. So take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment so you can stop working so hard for so little return. Take your life back. Profit designers, on today's episode, Mike and I sit down with Barb Wade. Barb was one of my coaches early on as I was growing my business. In today's conversation, we get into an in-depth look on the coaching industry, what goes on within the industry that you as a possible consumer of coaching services should be aware of. And we also talk about, if you're going to pursue coaching, how to utilize coaching for yourself to make it a really good experience that supports your life vision and where you're headed. Barb Wade is a transformational coach, speaker, and author who works with high achievers to release the patterns, fears, and obstacles that have been keeping them settling for less than what they truly want most. Barb helps her clients redefine success based on their authentic values and priorities, not external shoulds and expectations, and create exceptional real-world results in life and work. Barb speaks frequently at conferences and on industry panels, has been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS News, and Fox, and was the official on-air life coach for the Fine Living channel for 8 years. So with that, let's join our conversation with Barb. So, Mike, we are joined today with my coach from years ago, Barb Wade. And just as we were coming onto the podcast, we were talking about the fun dynamic that we have going on here, because I coached Mike years ago. And so we've got some coaches here. So clearly, I think the message on today's Profit by Design podcast is coaching is a good thing.
It is. Absolutely.
You're here.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is when I started working with Barb, my business was pretty tiny. And I had had some success, but I had not really gotten it to the place where I was happy with it. I knew it could be bigger and better. And I had come across Barb, and I'm not quite sure how I found you, Barb, but I do remember, I told you this years ago, I do remember that I saw one image on your website and I thought, I think Barb's the one that I want to hire to coach me. And it was you on a playground with your children. And it was just that juxtaposition of work supports life. It didn't say that in the picture, but that was the message that was conveyed. And so I reached out to you, and you were I think you came into my life at a pivotal moment and really helped me grow, tap the potential, and it's continued to grow from there. And you, as I've been in touch with you over the years, you personally have had a major pivot that you have made by choice, and you've done it because your work was not supporting your life. And so that's what Mike and I are really eager to dig into with you here. So tell us a little bit about your background and this pivot and where you are now.
First of all, it's my pleasure to share this. I'm going to be, as always, completely transparent today and share with you the different kind of twists and turns of my journey. One of the most important things is to state that I've now been officially coaching for 20 years as a full-time profession. So I started in the year 2000, and that's somewhat unbelievable, and I'm so grateful. Now, I mention that because it's a piece of the story, because for the first 10 years, I was doing the kind of coaching I loved. I was working with executives and high achievers and people who were, up to things in the world on being more effective, more fulfilled, more authentic, overcoming stress and outside expectations and shoulds to really chart their own paths. And it was wonderfully gratifying. And I was doing well as well. Financially, I was in the top 2% of coaches who were really making some nice money. But when the economy crashed around 2009-10, it was a little bit, it crashed in 2008, but around 2009 and 10 is where we started noticing, wow, we've really dipped into a lot of our savings. And that's the time at which I decided to hire myself, my next business coach, to grow my coaching practice bigger. And even though I was making a couple $100,000, which was rare for a coach, my husband lost his work, and we just had to figure out how to leverage. So I'll truncate the story a little, and Sabrina, you can ask me more specifics, but I hired my first big name business coach. And the first thing they did was look at how I should be doing groups, and I should be doing classes, and I should have a 1-year mastermind, and I should be doing live events. And initially I was eating it up because those were all wonderfully leveraged options, and I understand the math with regard to the one-to-many model. And so I started executing and implementing those things. And within a couple of years, I had a very, very full practice with, I'm telling you, live events and webinars and, masterminds and retreats. And you remember me back during that time, and I put my heart and soul into all of it. But I had 2 small children. And, even though I had a wonderfully supportive husband, 2 little girls want mommy a lot. And I was stretched very, very, very thin. And it got worse and worse in terms of, wow, I'm losing my quality of life here. And yet I'm a coach teaching people about quality of life. So that became this internal conundrum that I was really keeping secret for a while because I didn't want to share that for shame that I would lose credibility with my audience. But deep down in truth, I was spread way, 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 way too thin. And one thing I'll share more about later as well is that a lot of my colleagues who were also advertising, here's how to create a 7-figure business, and had these wonderful websites of them on the beach, with their laptop on their lap with the waves crashing behind them. I knew many of these colleagues well personally, and many of them were also on the verge of breakdown, were burnt out, were overworking, were not seeing a lot of profit, but weren't, showing that to the public. And so my pivot, and I don't mean to be on a little speech here, I just think that backstory was relevant, but my pivot was 3 years ago, I hit a pinnacle of income, of gross income. And at the end of the year, I said, my highest income year ever, and I cannot and will not do this anymore. And I came out in January with a video to my mailing list of thousands of people who followed my work. And I said, here's the truth. I'm not in a great place physically. I'm exhausted emotionally. My spiritual practices have dropped. I've gotten incongruent with my own message and why I got into coaching. And I need to change course, pull things back, really put my effort and energy where there's the highest revenue yield and the most gratification. And I'm going to be slashing at least 50% of my offerings. And I've done so. And I can tell you more about that. The one thing I do want to mention is how many emails I got from people saying, wow, thank you for being so open with us. Thank you for sharing that. You've given me permission to get off the treadmill of these high name coaches who are pushing us so hard to do so much. And if you're being transparent about it, now I don't feel so guilty saying no to certain things I'm kind of being nudged or pushed or even coerced to be doing in the name of serving the world. So there you go.
So that piece right there is what really troubles me about the coaching industry. And I think part of what I want to do on this episode today is pull back the curtain on the coaching industry and point out that when a coach is pressuring you to do something that does not feel right at your core, that it feels like, there's one thing to push someone when a vision is laid out and they really want that vision and they are, holding back or playing small and pushing in that direction. It's a whole other thing when a coach pushes you to do something that feels out of alignment with your core values. And that's what I really hear you speaking to. And when that is happening, that is bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece that you're touching on in all of this is the social pressure that comes into play when you are with these other high achieving coaches and they're saying, play big, get your message out there, have a large impact. I think this can happen a lot inside coaching groups where peers start to pressure each other to follow in line with what the high name coaches are suggesting that they should do. So the big message that I want to get out with this is pay attention to what feels right for you and don't lose track of that. You expressed it so beautifully when you said, I got all these emails back that people really connected with what I was going through and that courage to pivot.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because in retrospect, I can look back and see how influenced I was being by a coach I was paying a lot of money to. So there's the cognitive dissonance one feels thinking, I'm not going to do what my coach tells me. I'm paying them so much money, right? And I was in an elite group of coaches working with this coach who were all doing similar, right? So there was such group agreement, as it were, around these paradigms. And when I would talk about my kids and when I would talk about, hey, I'm putting them to bed and then going back to my computer for a few hours every night, that would be really kind of poo-pooed by some of my peers as well as this particular coach. Like, well, that's what it takes. And are you committed or are you not committed? And for a while, I got very confused by that. Gee, I don't want to be someone who's not committed. Maybe they're right, And in retrospect, now that I've kind of gotten out of the clutches, I look back and see how confused I was and how subject to that influence. And it will never happen to me again now, because what this whole thing has done, and I don't regret any of it, is strengthen my resolve about creating a business that absolutely serves me and knowing that that allows me to contribute in the highest and best for all concerned, and that it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So big lessons learned that were worth learning.
Yeah. I know we're talking about the coaching industry, and I think that entrepreneurs who are listening to this, who are in their own industries outside of the coaching industry, can very much relate to that social pressure and really about, you've got to grind it out. And that's kind of the dominant discourse about entrepreneurship is if you want something bad enough, you have to grind it out. You've got to be willing to put in the long hours. And I really feel like, you're making a statement in your own life, work supports life. And it is okay to choose a different path. And it's okay to choose a way of being successful that supports our lifestyle. That's what Mike and I talk about here on the Profit by Design podcast. Every episode is, what has your business done for you lately? Mm-hmm. How is it supporting your life choices?
And here's the cherry on top. I have to interject. It also turns out I make and keep as much money now as I did during those years of tremendous burnout. So it's not like, oh, she pulled back and she's a lot happier now and more balanced. Of course, she's not making much money, but she's happier. It's not that. I net the same, if not more, in a 20-hour work week than I did at seven-figure gross when I had such excruciatingly high expenses and was working an 80-hour week. That was a big wake-up call to me, that everybody was so excited about gross income. But when I looked at what I net and kept in my pocket, I'm matching that now with a much smaller infrastructure and a much lower overhead. So I didn't have to sacrifice income to be happy or do, work supports life. And I think that has to be shared.
Yes, I so appreciate you saying that because you learned the profit lesson that's not talked about in many entrepreneurial circles. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And you can have sanity and keep a lot more, or insanity and it all runs out the door. But boy, look at all that money coming into the business. It must be great.
Well,
and it's not so great.
It's true. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say I never had a mentor who wasn't obsessed with what gross income I would make. So they could say, I have another seven-figure mentee. I have an apprentice who's now at the seven-figure mark. And that mattered to these coaches. We never talked about profit or margins or anything like that.
So I'm going to ask you both to dig into this way deeper, right? So I feel like what we're talking about is the tip of the iceberg. As an entrepreneur, coach, whatever it is, how do you find the peace and the calm to be able to go in the path of, in the path that you're talking about, right? So, in my own personal experience, the whole grind it out mentality, the grow, the fear of missing out, and, should I listen to this coach, that coach, buy this program, that program, it gets absolutely insane. And you're so driven to be successful. And there's a point in people's lives, and maybe this could be taught, I'm assuming it can, and I guess that's my big question for you. How do people like me not go through almost 30 years of the school of hard knocks to reach a sense of calm with a deeper understanding of how to work less and, follow the intuition and make a hell of a lot more by doing the right things that feel right instead of following everything? Is it teachable? Like, is this a teachable mindset thing that we can get there somehow?
It's absolutely teachable. It's what I do every single day in my practice. So I ended up learning it through the experience. And I wish it could have gone differently. And every day, my conversations with my executives and entrepreneurs are very much about learn from what I had to go through. Let me shorten the process, and recognize that I hit all the fame and glory externally. And my life was pretty bankrupt, behind the scenes. And I don't mean, bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, like I was going through any, dramatic anything. I just mean burnt out, tired, depressed, unhappy. But boy, those gross income numbers were there. So I impart this as much as I possibly can, everywhere that I can. And my current clients, because I have so many specific stories, I think, with detail, have begun to trust, have begun to recognize, wow, I would go through the same thing and I bet I'd come to the same conclusion. I think I'm going to really trust her experience. And with the way that I coach, I'll stop and I'll go, hold up. Who's making that decision, fear or trust? You're going down a particular path right now. So what would love say? What would trust say? And I ask that question a lot because, I tend to believe, and I've been taught this in various ways, that we make decisions from either love or fear. And people have heard that one before, okay? And of course, love can look like trust and generosity and contribution and abundance, and fear can look like that fear of missing out. And I better grind, because if I don't grind, people are going to trample over me on their way to the top. So with clients, I stop at the motivation point when they're thinking of a decision or an action or a strategy. Whoa, hold on. Let's just check. Is that coming from love, trust, generosity, creativity, or is that coming from control, manipulation, fear of missing out, panic? And that can be a stopping point for people where they have the aha before having to go out in real life and go that far down the path to have the epiphany that I had.
Yeah, I really love that question. Are you making that decision out of love or fear? Much of the time that I have been caught up in grinding it out, I don't want to portray that I never grind it out, because I do. And the times when I have been very overly caught up in it is out of fear. Like there's something that I'm going to miss out on, or something that I'm putting internal pressure on myself to achieve. And that pressure comes from fear. And so I think for all of us to be aware of, if I am in a place right now where my work is not supporting my life, asking that question, is this because of love or is it out of fear? I personally find that it's so important to have more and more examples of entrepreneurs out there in the world with this message, because when we are caught up in grinding it out, we have tunnel vision going on and we don't realize there's another way to do it. But if we encounter another entrepreneur who looks relaxed, calm, rested, they're actually going out on the weekends. They're not stuck at home in front of their computer. That's very curious. And that catches attention that, hey, here's somebody, their business seems like it's succeeding. And they don't seem like they're working as hard as me. What's up with that? And so at Tap the Potential, as our clients start to experience that, we approach them and ask, can we capture a success story? Can we share where you've been and now what your life is and how different it is, so that we can get more of those stories out there to inspire other entrepreneurs with what's possible?
I'll add one other quick thing. May I, really quickly? You just made me remember one thing, which is that when I've had clients who've been willing to make a decision from trust, when we stop and we check the motivation and we say, okay, would trust warrant this decision or would it not? And they go, oh man, this is so scary because I'm so afraid I'm going to miss out, but I'm going to do what love and trust warrants. I'm going to say no to this opportunity. I've watched them have experiences where other miraculous things occur following the conviction of that decision, right? Following the conviction of that no to the thing that would have been motivated by fear. And they've seen, oh my God, 2 weeks later, this lateral nonlinear thing happened and it wouldn't have come forward if I'd said yes to that other thing. I think we've all seen that happen. And that starts to establish a lot of credibility with people too.
One thing that I find is really scary as we're talking about this is that it almost seems like this needs to be like a program or a book where it's read this first before you start working with a coach, right? So many entrepreneurs go to a coach because they're completely lost, right? And then imagine, so here I am, frustrated, scared, lost, fearful, maybe out of money, whatever the case is. I'm frantic. I'm not thinking straight. Now I'm latching onto a coach who's jamming all this stuff into me, right? I'm listening to it because I feel like it's light at the end of the tunnel, but is it really? So it's almost scary, right? Because there's so many people out there that are like that right now. There's somebody online right now signing up for a $10,000 course that's going to make their life a living hell, right? But they don't know any better. So how do you get the message out to all these people out there? It's like, read this first before you hire a coach, like download now. I think what you're saying is so important.
Well, and Barb, I think it's something that you and I could speak to here that could be really helpful to our profit designers is, what should someone look for when they're seeking to hire a coach? How do you know if the coach that you're about to hire and invest, $10, $20, $30,000 with is a coach that is going to be ethical, that is going to have integrity, that is going to hold your best interest at heart, not the coach's interest and the glorification of the coach? I have my ideas, and Barb, I want to hear from you. What in your experience is some good things for the general consumer of coaching services to be paying attention to?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you several things that come to mind. In interviewing a coach, you really want to feel what your body is telling you, what your intuition is telling you. We get into our heads and we are frantic usually when we're hiring a coach because something's not working. Otherwise, we wouldn't hire a coach. Something's not working. So we can get into our heads and into analysis of, who's going to serve me the best. And I really like to slow people down in a consult and really make sure they feel into their gut what feels safe, what feels like they'd be so lovingly listened to, heard, and supported. And another element of that is the coach laying out for you some strategy that's one of their cookie cutter formulas? Or are they asking you questions about who you are, what your values are, what priorities you want to attend to in this lifetime, where your life is off kilter or your work is off kilter to those things you say are your values and priorities? And if they begin kind of helping craft where you might go from a place of a lot of questions to you, not reaching to you or here's some fabulous model I have and I've done this with 10 other businesses and I can do it for you too, you'll feel whether you're being preached to or whether that coach is eliciting answers from you and clarifications from you. And then the last thing I'll say is, I don't like any of those coaches who say, if you decide yes now, you get a special package. And, if you need to take some time to think about it, then you're not a decision maker. There are still people out there doing that. I usually say to somebody, I appreciate that you want to say yes now. We've just had this deep 2-hour consult. You're excited. I'd love to have you. Hey, sleep on it a couple days, sleep on it a week. I want people that are a whole body yes, that are fully committed. It doesn't matter if you're afraid. Afraid is fine. Nervous is fine. In panic is fine. But have a full body yes. I slept on it. It's not impulsive. I really want to partner with this person. So anyone that's giving you any time limits or special deals, I would absolutely stay away from. That's not to say that I don't ask somebody to make an informed and empowered decision within the next few days to a week, whether that's decision is a yes or a no, because I do want to hold somebody to not letting this be just another incompletion in their lives. But you get the vibe that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. And, just to add to that, one of the things that I'm aware of when I have purchased coaching services is that in the moment, in that conversation, it feels very exciting. And a good coach will listen. And you touched on that. There's more listening and questioning going on in the conversation. And we do offer decisive action savings that tap the potential, and we give people time to think about it. We never ask for a commitment on the spot. We want people to go talk to their spouses, to look at the whole picture and step away from the excitement of the conversation and give consideration to it. We offer that savings because we want people who, when it's right, we want them to move forward and we want to incentivize that. So it's that place of watching for, is there pressure? And this is the caution that I would give with our listeners. If you feel pressure to move forward, that is the first inkling that you're getting of what that relationship is going to be like all throughout, where the pressure is going to come from. The other words of wisdom that I would give our listeners is to look at the people that the coach has worked with, the success stories, and look for diversity in what they are speaking to about their experience with that coach. If you see 5 or 6 testimonials and they all have a very similar flair, chances are what you're seeing is a coach that has a cookie cutter program, and there's a set thing that people are going to go through, and it's not going to be customized. And then the other thing is to dig into the coach's own training. Where have they been trained? What kind of certifications do they hold? Coaching is the Wild West. Anybody can call themselves a coach, and ask that coach, what is their philosophy of coaching? That can be a very revealing question, because if it's a coach who says, here's my program, it's going to go like this, that's not a coaching philosophy. Coaching is about questioning. It is about designing what is going to happen in coaching around the client. The client is always at choice. The client is always driving the relationship in terms of, these are my goals. These are the things that I'm seeking to accomplish. And then I need you and the resources and the coaching that you're going to provide to support me in that direction. If the coach is coming out and saying, here's the goal, here's what we're going to work towards, this is what you need to be doing. And that, I hear that in your experience that you described earlier. The coach is telling you, here's the goal. And you're thinking, I guess so. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that sounds good. Go for it.
And let me clarify, we're in agreement about the decisive action thing. I really want to make a distinction really quickly for those listening. Giving someone an incentive to make an informed and empowered decision within 2 days, 2 nights, whatever you want it to be, as long as we are unattached, we're holding them to be a leader. We're holding them to make a yes or a no. A no is fine. A yes is wonderful. We don't have a, hey, you get a special deal. That's the pressure-y thing. You get a special deal if you decide by this. I am all for incentivizing or even giving people timeframes when it comes from our commitment to their highest good and giving them the sanctity of making that decision. So that's what you guys do. I know that that's what you guys do. Why wouldn't you want someone who's decisive? If I were going to work with you and you threw a gauntlet down and said you got 72 hours, then I'd like to challenge you, Barb, to review your finances and do some journaling and meditate and stand on your head in the corner or all the processes you need to do. But I'm going to challenge you to do them within 72 hours. Because if we work with you, we're going to ask you to move and be assertive. I'd be enlivened by that. But the energy, what you started articulating so beautifully about whether there's a slimy or pressured or manipulative energy versus we're throwing a gauntlet or a challenge at someone in service to their highest good with non-attachment. So,
yeah. Mike, I want to put this to you because you have been a consumer of coaching services, and I know you've had some good experience with coaches and bad experiences. What in your experience has been helpful in selecting a coach?
Yes.
Well, it's a good question. And I was actually going to spin it a little bit different before you asked me that. So I think I will spin it because I think you'll get the same answer. So undoubtedly, the biggest pivot in my life with coaching has been working with Sabrina. And I think I challenged her system a little bit because I didn't want to follow the system, but she adapted to it immediately and coached what I needed to be coached, right? So there's that type of coaching, right? Then there's the coaching where, you pay for a block of 10 hours or whatever it is, and they're working on a very specific thing. My question to you guys was going to be, is there a place for that? So as a business owner, how do I decipher between the place, is there a place for somebody who's claiming to be a coach, maybe has expertise in one area that is going to charge me for a block of hours and work through some problem that I have, and they're calling themselves a business coach, as compared to working with somebody like Sabrina, where you're immersed in a program that's going to be transformational, both mindset, it's a personal development mindset change, not a fix this now type of thing, right? So that was kind of the question I was going to ask you. But my experience with the coaches that are just fix this now and buy a block of 10 hours was a complete waste of time. I don't need somebody to ask me, for me, it just didn't work. Fundamentally, I've read all the books. I know what I'm supposed to do. Where I was stuck was with my own brain, right? My own mindset and getting out of my own way. And working with Sabrina, I still use so many of those things every single day. The learner judge your path, all those different things that change my life, like literally every aspect of it, personally, professionally, how I interact with people, kids, family, my wife, everything's different.
Too bad you have so few results there, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. So and it's, I feel extremely lucky, and I don't believe that there's a lot of Sabrinas out there. I just don't, there's of course some, right? But I think it's probably the oddity that you find somebody that can transform you in a certain way. Or she didn't transform me. She gave me the tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that is such a key distinction, because if I sat here and I said, look at Mike, he's doing great, and look what I did to get him there, that is a slimy kind of coach thing. I gave him the tools. He showed up. He played full out. He was willing to get vulnerable, which now I want to talk about what makes a good coaching client. Somebody who is willing to say, this is really hard. I messed up here. I did this. Help me think through how can I do it differently next time. that's how Mike showed up in the coaching relationship. And, to your initial question, Mike, is there room for that kind of fix this, coach who's going to just dig into that? In my experience, as entrepreneurs, when we have something not working in our business, the thing that we look at in front of us and decide is our problem is not the problem. We start fixing the wrong thing. And so in some ways, this is a challenge that we deal with at Tap the Potential. We have people who show up who have very specific problems that they want us to fix. And as we get into the conversation with them, we realize there's a whole bigger picture and a context, which is why we start the engagement by looking at the entrepreneur, what their lifestyle is like, how they're experiencing life. Are they having symptoms of stress and burnout coming in? And looking at the business, because we're able to zoom out and say, you know what, Mike, let's work on mindset first, because that's what's going to have that cascading impact that you're trying to achieve this specific result that you've identified. So I think we need to be very cautious if we go looking for a specific solution from a coach. That's where things, Barb, what's your response to his question on that?
I would pretty much agree with you with one minor difference. First of all, if we're talking about someone who wants long-term sustainable transformation that is going to change their lives and significantly change their business, we have to do the deep work from the inside out. So I'm in full agreement with you, Sabrina. You can't give someone just some new behaviors, do this, and this. And then we haven't systemically looked at how fear drives them and how they make decisions and when they're so burnt out, whether they're seeing clearly and how they communicate and like who we are being, how we carry ourselves, our own mindset, our own inner dialogue, our own level of vibrancy or depletion influences every decision we make. It trickles into the entire business. So I'm with you that I only want people who really want sustainable transformation and want to learn from the process of coaching tools and skills and ways of being that they will carry and apply for the rest of their lives in all situations. So that's my philosophy. The one additional thing I was going to add is I see that from time to time, there can be a validity to hire someone for just a particular skill development. And I'm not sure if that's what you were asking about, Mike, but I wouldn't call that person a coach, because that's not really coaching. But if I needed, I know nothing about doing podcasts and I really need to hire someone for 3 conversations to consult with me and teach me a skill or strategy or system I don't otherwise know. Sure, I can from time to, that's just like I'd hire someone to do search engine optimization. You know what I'm saying? So, if there's a specific need and it's more, I lack the information and I need a consultant to teach me certain information, I would ask people to be very cautious to distinguish if that's what's really going on. And I would say there are sometimes opportunities for that can work, but I like to see people engaged in a deep coaching experience with a wonderful coach who then can help them assess, do we also need this external skill building person? Or is that you running after something to put a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem?
Yeah, I totally appreciate that you clarifying that, because what I agree that if it's a skill-based thing and it's, it really does fall more in consultancy, I believe. And in my own experience, I hired, what were called coaches, or they portrayed themselves as coaches. And in particular, I remember, we had our weekly call and it was, so how do you feel today? Why do you feel that way? Can you change your thought on that? Like, it was just high level garbage, right? Like, it reminded me of when my mom made me go to a counselor in high school because I didn't get good grades, right? Why are you not getting good grades? Because I'm not really interested in school. Why are you not interested in school? Because I just don't like it. Well, why don't you like it? I mean, that's not helping me, right? But, identifying maybe the root of the problem. Okay, why are you disinterested in this? Is there, something we can do so that you can develop some interest, or put it, like it's the deep stuff, right? It's not just looking at the topical stuff and pretending to put a Band-Aid on it and say, I went to coaching school and now I'm a coach, right? I mean, I think that the psychology part of it is really key. I mean, it's really the deep work, and you have to be willing to do the deep work, and you need somebody that's going to help bring yourself out and then present you with those tools to really get down and dirty and start making some things happen.
That's why I love Sabrina's little moniker of the business psychologist, to be honest,
Oh, yeah.
because it is exactly the blend of those things. I really do think the best coaches, and I'm biased because I am inside of this category, but come with this strong psychological background in psychology and sociology and human development and human potential, as well as wonderful business strategists who've been out in the world and seen results and built big businesses. And the blend of the two, for me, allows me to do a combination where some of the work we're doing has to do with external movement, and quite a bit of the work we're doing has to do with internal movement and how the two interact. And so that's another thing I might look for in a coach is, do they have both sides of that coin?
Yeah. Mike, I want to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yay, let's put Mike on the spot.
Since Barb and I have been on the spot, I have to say it's so flattering to listen to you guys talk. I want to acknowledge the kind things that you've said. It's really touched my heart. That's my intention, to show up in that way as a coach. And it's very affirming to hear I'm succeeding.
Your payment just hit my PayPal account.
Go have fun, but don't leave your house. Coronavirus and all. No, Mike, you've been through a lot of coaching. What words of wisdom would you give to an entrepreneur who maybe has never had a coach?
100%. It is being truthful and vulnerable. I think the people that I've witnessed that have had the most success with coaching, and also for myself, was really, you have to take down the walls. You have to be super vulnerable, and you have to really look at the inside. Like, if you have thoughts a certain way and you're just yesing somebody to death and, okay, yep, I'm going to go, tell my employee that. Great. Okay, thanks. Right? Doesn't work. Right? So it's really, digging real deep into that iceberg and figuring out, why are these conflicts happening? What am I afraid of? Why am I fearful of this? How could I transform my mindset to get around these obstacles of fear or insecurity or, all of those other terms, right? And really then looking at the tools that are available that help with those issues, right? So stop internalizing things. And, just for my own experiences of, the internalizing things, right? Feeling like I had to be, the grinder and just grind everything out and hold everything in, and you can't complain, and, you have to just be, the man, and you just got to go, 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 go. And, and you really destroy yourself from the inside out. And I think one of the stories that I told you when we first started working together was I was part of a very specific industry group at one time. And, I'm a very cynical guy, and I kind of see through bullshit when it happens pretty quickly. And I also trust people 100% from day one. But then when I feel like that trust is getting broken or they're not sincere with me, then it starts to erode very quickly, pretty much to zero. And there was a huge sense of, let's not be truthful and vulnerable. Let's just pretend like everything's great. And you don't grow from that. So my takeaway from that was, I don't want to be like that anymore. I really want to dig into myself and figure out first what's broken with me, how I can fix it, and how I could be better, and then work on the other things.
That's tremendous words of wisdom for entrepreneurs to latch onto about to really utilize coaching effectively. It is really that showing up authentically and willingness to be vulnerable and unwillingness to participate in a facade. Barb's voiced that's a theme here. Don't be willing to participate in a facade. Look to something that is real. As you were talking, Mike, it got me thinking about, and then I think, Barb, I think you and I can have a little conversation about this. It'll be really helpful to our profit owners. Understanding the change process. And that fear is going to show up in the change process. I see this, and we really try very hard to be mindful to notify our ahead of time. When you're on the cusp of change, the gremlins are going to come out in full force, because the gremlins are the enemies of change. They like status quo. So anytime we're about to make a big step forward to improve our circumstances, even though we very much want what's on the other side, staying the same is very tempting because we know what the same is. There is no unknown in the same. We may not like it, but at least we know what's going to happen. So one of the places where fear pops up is that moment of saying yes to I'm going to move forward with coaching. Because that's not a yes to I'm moving forward with coaching. That is a yes to I am about to go through a transformation. I will come out of this very different on the other side. I want what's on the other side, but oh my gosh, it's scary because I don't know what it's going to be like exactly. So I just want to say, be aware of that. And even as you're in the coaching process, there are times like we work with clients for a year at a time. There can be times 4 months, 6 months, 8 months in where they're making a major step forward, making some massive change, and fear pops up. And that's why I love that we have our clients in small group, because they can hear from others who've been there who can say, I know it's scary and it's okay on the other side. You're going to be okay. You're going to be better on the other side because you're doing this. Barb, I'd love to hear your thoughts on fear in the coaching process and what to be aware of.
Well, if there weren't fear, I would say somebody's not going deep enough. So welcoming the fear, fear runs us whether we're conscious of it or not conscious of it. So having a lot of fear means it's become conscious. Now we can work with it. Versus I'm operating on top of it. I'm operating on top of fear. I don't recognize it. I've developed some kind of healthy or unhealthy, rather, kind of arrogance or overconfidence that's built upon repressed fear. So I say we want to welcome fear. Fear is great because then we can test its veracity. Then we can pull it apart. Then we look at whether it's built on a foundation of truth or whether it's built on a shaky, crumbling foundation, which in most cases it almost always is. What I like to do with people when fear is the really present issue, because it continues to come up, you're right, throughout the coaching process, somebody might actually, for the first few months, have a bunch of results and be really excited and then hit a setback or a plateau and plummet back into fear. So what I like to do is have people go back to finding their own resourcefulness and trying to figure out a way to articulate this well, their own ability to self-soothe and to fall back on a spiritual orientation, whatever that might be. I don't necessarily mean religious, but I try to remove the externals from the mix. I try to use it as an opportunity to say, look, we don't want you to feel you're safe because you have XYZ money in the bank, because if that goes away, then you're not safe. I don't want to go take this fear and have you run out and achieve more and have the false sense that this additional achievement is now what makes you safe. Let's do some inner work on how you connect to a place of safety, of trusting your own resourcefulness, of knowing if the economy changed or everything went away, that you have the resources, internal and external. Internal in terms of your truth and your smarts and your ability to, not fall prey to fear and false beliefs, and your external resources in terms of the people who will rally around to help you. That all exists outside of or regardless of outside circumstances. So I try to, in my coaching, really help people anchor the ability to feel safe first, even though the puzzle pieces shift all the time. Because that's how we end up in a place of self-mastery and ultimate calm versus, I'm safe when things are good, but the minute things are bad, I'm not safe anymore. And I don't know if I even answered the question.
I think it was good.
That is such a timely response to this because, with what we're going through with coronavirus right now, there's a lot of fear coming up for people. And I can speak to, because I've had such good coaching like Barb, I have been able to settle myself down when fear comes up and say, I know I have the resources to get through this. I don't know how, but I know I have the resources, and I can look back on lots of other circumstances where I've been in my life. Boy, things are really hard here. This is the curveball. I wasn't expecting it. And I come out on the other side. So I think that's a big part of what is to be gained from good coaching is learning to trust our internal resources and that feeling of, I'm going to be okay. I've got this, regardless of what's going on in the economy. Barb, you have a free gift for our listeners that ties right into this. So I want to ask you to share about that.
It's very funny. I feel like I need Mike's PayPal address to pay him for setting it up so beautifully, because this was not planned. None of our conversation today was pre-planned. And Mike set this up so beautifully, because what I wanted to give everyone is a little guidebook I created called Love versus Fear: How to Make Spirit-Led Choices for a Prosperous Life. And sure enough, we got into the love versus fear conversation, and I've never even met Mike before. So it is a little booklet with a step-by-step process of how to stop when you're facing a decision, and the questions to ask yourself to figure out if your answer, if your truth is coming from fear disguised, as, well, this really feels right. Why? Because if I don't, I'm going to lose money. Oh, nope, that doesn't really feel right. That's a fear-driven statement, right? So it's a little book with some questions and answers to teach people, to help them assess what would love say. That's all my clients feel like we should get t-shirts that say, what would love say? Because I say it so often. What would love say? And they know that love means trust or generosity or being confident or expressing creativity or believing in abundance. So the book, Love versus Fear, it's very simple, but it's a repeatable exercise. And I say that for real high achievers, they get to know me and then they eventually trust me and they eat all this stuff up. This might sound a little woo-woo, like, oh, spirit-led choices for a prosperous life. And I laugh because now my biggest, high achieving CEO guys, and I work with men and women, but I'm just picking the quintessential person you'd think would be the opposite of this particular exercise, will call me and go, love said I should do this.
But that is so true. And one of the things, part of our rally cry at Tap the Potential is lead with love. And as we have been dealing with the challenges of coronavirus, we have really been encouraging our entrepreneurs at Tap the Potential to lead with love. So I love that you are sharing with us a powerful question of what would love say? That just getting into that place in our minds when we're making a choice. What's the URL?
So you've already introduced me, but my name is Barb Wade. So the URL is at barbwade.com/love. So that is BARBWADE.com/love. And I want to point out, the same external decision could be rooted in fear or love. It's not always revealed by the choice. It's the motivation underneath the choice. So I might say yes to a deal because it feels aligned and I know I can contribute. And even though it's a financial risk, I'm just trusting magic will come out of it. Or I could say yes to the same deal from I want them to like me. I'm afraid nothing else better will come along. I have a fear of missing out. And in both those examples, I was saying yes to a particular deal. So I always point out to people, the choice could look the same. And you really have to then excavate the motivation, excavate the beliefs it's riding on to see, is this a love-based or a fear-based decision? And that's explained in the little book.
I love that. That's such a powerful distinction for us to be holding. So Mike, do you have any final thoughts here?
One thing that I wrote down, one of my big takeaways is certainly working on mental strength eliminates mental instability.
I love it.
Good. That's a really good takeaway. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Barb. It's a great conversation today.
Well, I think the world of you, which you already know, and I think you're doing phenomenal work in the world. And I just delight to meet you, Mike. And I'm an open book. Barbwade.com is my site. If I can have a conversation with anyone that would provide value, please reach out. And I'm just so glad that you asked me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. If you're like most business owners, you have a cash-sucking business that's taking over your life. After the first year in our Better Business, Better Life program at Tap the Potential, you'll have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had. Get started. Take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.